As I always do at the start of a week, I was looking around for video topics and came across this on the Arch Linux subreddit. Arch Linux Community Survey. This is not like official to the Arch Linux project, it's for the subreddit itself, but I still thought it'd be fun to go through, talk about my experience on Arch, talk about how I approach different things, and hey, if you want to go and look at it for yourself, I'll leave it linked in the description down below. Today we're excited to share a wide-scope user survey to help gain a finer understanding of where the Arch community is and where it's going. We don't expect it's perfectly comprehensive or perfect really in any way. We're open to tweaking the method in future iterations, but we think it has the potential to provide valuable and interesting insight, and we hope you'll participate if you're able. Thank you very much if you do participate, and we hope you enjoy the survey and the results as much as we do. So here is the survey itself. Now, I know some people like to complain, oh, it's on Google Forms. Why is it on Google Forms? There are so many other form tools you can use. Just make a burner account. Just make a burner account. It's fine. And if you're commenting on YouTube and complaining about Google Forms, why? And if you're on Reddit and complaining about Google Forms, Reddit's not much better. Anyway, let's get right into it. Now, obviously, like any survey you see today, the terms AI are going to be important. I've not actually read some of the later questions, so I'm very curious to see what exactly it is going to ask. But I am not as much of an AI hater as many other people. Now, I am an AI doomer. I think AI is going to ruin everything, but we'll get to that in just a bit. Anyway, what is your primary language? I think that's pretty obvious. Maybe I should put other here. Barely Australian. No, English, obviously. My English skills are best described as I at least claim to be a native speaker. If you show up to my streams, if you show up to my podcast, if you watch these videos, you know... you might get a different take depending on what's happening. I tend to forget words very often, but technically I'm a native speaker. Which of these is the best description of your primary operating system? Arch, Arch-based like Endeavour, Garuda, Arco, Catchy, Arch Linux, ARM, Debian, Debian-based. I like how Manjaro isn't listed in this list of Arch-based, even though arguably, it's probably the biggest, and it's definitely a lot bigger than Catchy and Arco. Fedora, RHEL, some other variety of Linux, or are you a Windows, Mac OS, Chrome OS, or a BSD user? No, I am a full-fat Arch Linux user. By the way, how long have you been a user of Arch Linux? Okay, so here's the fun thing about this channel. I've been doing this for a lot longer than you might expect. Brodie Robertson fails to install Arch. Yeah, okay. This is such an old video. 5 years ago. Look at this dude. Look at this baby. I was a lot skinnier back then. Oh yeah, I also had this intro, I'll just let you hear it. For anyone who's not been around for that long.
Morning everyone and welcome back to my channel.
I forgot about that intro.
So as you can see, we are back in the shed.
Also, I was terrible at speaking back then. Yeah, so I record a lot of videos in this shed. I was trying to do like the whole Luke Smith outdoor thing, and I just needed to find my own, like,
it's nice outside.
My own thing that wasn't just copying what somebody else was doing. Now, I don't hate the idea, and I kind of want to do something again like this, but yeah. Also, I just didn't really enjoy being in the house back when I was at this place. I absolutely despised my housemate. So to answer the question then, that is between 3 and 7 years. Let me know down below how long you've used Arch for, assuming you are an Arch user, or if you've been using like an Arch-based system like Endeavour, Manjaro, Catchy, things like that. How long have you been using Arch? Okay, here is the next page. Which graphical environments have you tried? Select all that apply. So KDE, I am literally running at this very moment. I've used GNOME quite a few times on stream. Ecstasy, I don't think I've extensively tried. Cosmic, I've definitely done. OpenBox, I've used a little bit. Awesome, I've used a little bit. Actually, no, Awesome I used for like an entire year. DWM, I've very briefly used. BSPWM, I used that for about a year as well. i3, about the same. Sway, I used maybe like 3 or so months. Hyperland, that was my main thing before I came to KDE. Which graphical environments have you tried? Windows and Mac. Those are not graphical environments, but yes, I have used Windows quite a bit. I used that up until Windows 10. My first home PC was Vista, but I have used 95. And I believe I used Mac up until the first one they named after a mountain instead of a cat. Was that Catalina? Sorry, that was a lot newer than I thought it was. I was thinking of macOS 10.9 Mavericks. It's been a while since I've used macOS. Which is your favorite graphical environment? Now, that's a much tougher question. I am using KDE right now, and it doesn't bother me. Cosmic, I think, is going to be my favorite as they get more work done. I really liked back when I was on BSPWM, but BSPWM is one of those things where you configure it and then forget how you configured it a year later and have no idea how to modify things. i3, I have to use with an auto-tiling script. Sway is literally just Wayland i3. Hyperland is good. Hyperland is really nice. They finally fixed, we've actually finally fixed the drag and drop, so you can now actually drag and drop between Wayland and X-Wayland windows. I think at this very moment, I'm going to say KDE Plasma. But that is very much this very moment. Cosmic is shaping up to really good. A lot of the things I don't like about KDE, Cosmic is starting to address. So, fingers crossed at some point in the near future. Which kernel/kernels do you use? Now, I'm one of those people that highly recommend having at least 2 kernels installed. Whatever you want your standard kernel to be, and then an LTS kernel, because if something goes wrong in the newer kernel, you can always roll back to the LTS kernel and have a system that actually functions, maybe roll back to the other kernel and things like that. Yes, you can just go and use the Arch ISO and roll back like that, but that's too much work. It's much better to just have a system that actually functions. So in my case right now, it is standard Arch and Arch LTS. I don't believe I have Zen installed right now. I did for a period though, and I've heard a lot of people really talk very happily, very successfully, that's not the right word, we'll say very happily about the CatchyOS kernel. There's a bunch of additional changes they've made that I guess theoretically make things faster. I've not seen any actual benchmarks though. I have installed Arch on/in/as on a desktop. My very first install, or at least very first install on hardware, was on a laptop. I haven't done on a server. I haven't installed it on a server, but I have had a VPS that has Arch installed, so I guess that technically counts. Definitely in a virtual machine. My first setup was going to be a dual boot configuration, but I kind of wiped out my my Windows install. So technically, I didn't achieve the dual booting at that time, but later on, I did dual boot in the jankest way possible. I didn't change it in the bootloader. I changed it in the UEFI, and also I've used it in a mono boot configuration. That is what I have right now. I mainly use Arch on my desktop, that being the system I'm on right now. Honestly, when I get around to install it on the Chromebooks, I'm not going to use Arch. I'm going to probably chuck like Fedora or something on there because I just don't want to deal with, the whole rolling release thing on those systems. Before you use a task, which can be done with a graphical tool or a command line tool, how would you generally prefer to complete this task? Now, this is such a broad question that is really hard to answer. I guess most of the time, it's a graphical tool. If we're dealing with like just general text editing, and I do use things like NCM PCPP for my music player, but most things, yeah, I would say graphical tool. What is your preferred web browser? Now, at this moment, I am using Firefox, but on this system, I do have Brave and Chromium installed as well. Most of the time, though, I just use Firefox. The only times I use Brave are basically when I want to test out, a Chromium-based system, and then the only time I use Chromium is when Brave is not working. If it was not obvious, at least when it comes to my application choices, I like redundancy. Now, I should probably like redundancy when it comes to my files, but, let's not talk about that. What is your favorite terminal emulator? That right now is Alacrity. Whose is the TTY? If yours is the TTY, let me know down below. I want to know why. You are a very weird unit if that is the case. Also, the Cosmic Terminal is actually based on Alacrity, so I guess technically they're the same thing, but I guess it is its own application as well. What is your preferred session type? Well, for like the past 2 years now, I have been a Wayland enjoyer. I have Xorg still installed, and I still have... I think I have Awesome WM installed. I don't think I have BSPWM installed. But I don't really use it. Basically, the only reason I had it there is early on, there were some times where things wouldn't really work, and I just wanted to go back to the thing I knew. But for now, Wayland, it absolutely is. The CPU of my system is AMD. My GPU also is a dedicated AMD card. I'm running a full AMD system. I actually have looked at the Intel GPUs just solely for the fact that I can do AV1 encoding on them. I have a 6750 XT. AV1 is not a thing on that. I would very much like it because that'll make streaming a lot nicer. It's like nicer at lower bit rates, and when you're streaming, that's something you kind of want to do. Twitch doesn't have AV1 in the general rollout yet, is still in beta, but hopefully sometime next year, that'll be nice. But by the time I get my next GPU anyway, I would assume AMD's dealt with AV1 by then. How did you install your primary Arch Linux installation? So my current install is, I reckon, like 2 or 3 years old at this point. I think the Arch install script did exist back then, but I went the standard CLI installation. Honestly, if what you're getting at the end is just standard Arch Linux with standard Arch repos, it really doesn't matter. Now, Manjaro is technically its own different thing, where it does have its own custom repos, and turning Manjaro back into Arch is a challenge. So if you want to use Arch, I wouldn't recommend starting from Manjaro. I'd recommend starting from like an Endeavor or Arco or things like that, or Garuda, that also works. And then going from there, because those are literally just Arch with very minor modifications. I have my primary Arch system installed on what kind of storage? So my system is this is my system. So I have 4 drives. I have my video backup drive. This is a mechanical hard drive. I have my home. This is also a mechanical hard drive. I will eventually put that onto an SSD. I have my video game drive. This is on a SATA SSD. And then we have my boot and root drive. So this right here would be my boot partition. Right now it is not mounted because it doesn't need to be. Here is my swap, and here is my root. So right now it is on a NVMe drive. I would highly recommend just spend a little bit extra and get one. Most systems have a slot for it now, and they've gotten pretty cheap. You don't really need it. Yeah, you could just go like walk away for a couple of seconds, but it is nice to just turn your system on, and literally before your monitor's turned on, you're already booting into the system. For which task do you use Arch Linux? So I game, I have my gaming stream, if you don't know about that, over on Brodie on games, also on Twitch as well. General web surfing, that is what I do right this very moment. Video or music playback, work and business, that is what I do. Personal productivity, I don't do as much programming as I would like to do, but yes, I did most of my time at university on Arch Linux as well. I don't really use it as a server. I have like a couple of times, but right now my main server is a Debian system. Desktop aesthetic customization. As you can tell, I don't really do much in the way of racing nowadays. I used to do a lot more. I just kind of got bored with it. And digital creativity, I guess technically that is what this is. I do a very little amount of drawing. I would like to do more, but again, there's only so much time in the day. My experience using Arch is best described as difficult, fairly difficult, moderate, fairly easy, or easy. My time on Arch has been pretty much solid. There are a couple of issues that crop up every now and again, like, you know, your keyring is out of date, but now that I've seen the problem, I know what the problem is. Or, hey, your mirrors are broken and you're downloading at 300 bits per second. I now know how to update my mirrors. There hasn't really been anything major Arch specific. Yeah, like there's been like general Linux problems and general PC problems, but I wouldn't say anything special about Arch. Granted, I have a programming background, I'm used to reading documentation. I wouldn't say that for every single person, you're gonna have that exact same experience, and I'm willing to have things be like a little bit scuffed. I think using an AI system to help set up or troubleshoot Arch is generally to set up Arch, literally just go to YouTube and write how to install Arch Linux and copy like command for command what to do. I wouldn't say it's harmful or beneficial, right? Like if it gives you a command, like I guess delete the French language package, which is RMRF. It's a meme about RMRF. I guess that's harmful, but like I think most of the time it's just not gonna be useful. I think it's just gonna kind of tell you nonsense, so maybe somewhat harmful. Was Arch your first Linux distribution? Now, that kind of depends on how you define first. It is the first that I installed on hardware, but I have used distros before that. I think the very first I used was Ubuntu, and that was for one of my university classes, but that was inside of a virtual machine. After that, I used CentOS, and I believe that was in my big data course. But the one that I actually installed on my machine, that was Arch Linux. What is your preferred root file system? I just use ext4. Why is bcachefs here? Who put this here? I'm sure there's somebody that's gonna click it, but for me, yeah, it's ext4. Which pack-mem repositories do you have enabled? So I have core, extra, multilib entirely just for gaming, and a... Is the chaotic AUR signed or unsigned? I'm gonna check that. Right, of course, they have the keyring, the chaotic AUR keyring, of course, signed. Yes, those are the only ones I install. I have used the other ones on very, very rare occasions, but I want my main system to be stable, and literally the only thing I install from the chaotic AUR is Cosmic, because I don't want to compile a Rust desktop. I have better things to do with my day. When it comes to supplemental software libraries I definitely use the AUR. I don't use it when I don't need to. I don't really like having, like, you know, Git packages installed if I don't need to. Cosmic obviously is the one exception, but I definitely use it sometimes. Flatpak the same. If something is not available in the main repos or the AUR version isn't great, like OBS. The OBS Flatpak is the official way to use OBS, and it's the way you actually have the package functional. The one in the Arch repos should be deleted because it is not packaged correctly. So for that, yes, I definitely use it sometimes. Snap, not at all. app image, I, again, will use it if I need to use it. And right now, I think there's only one app image I actually frequently use, and that is Awakened PoE Trade, which is a trading plugin to make trading in Path of Exile easier. So definitely use that. And I guess something else. Chaotic AUR is technically just the AUR, so we'll go not at all. How many packages are installed on your primary Arch system? Yeah, there's a couple. There's a couple. I need to do a reinstall at some point and clean things out. I used to do a lot more videos where I would test software and I would not delete the package after I was done testing it. And now we have 2100 packages. How satisfied are you with Arch Linux? So here's the thing with Arch, right? I do not see a reason to use another distro. When people are like, hey, why don't you use Fedora on your main system or this or that? I'm just like, why? Like, what benefit is it going to provide me over the system I currently have set up on Arch? Everything works the way I want it to. I have the AUR. I don't really need to think about stuff. Stuff doesn't really break that often. So why would I use anything else? So definitely a 5. Next. Oh, okay, here we go. We have some text answers. If you could give your past self one piece of advice, what would it be? What would it be? I guess try out more desktops. Don't just use one thing for like a year and get comfortable and then eventually decide to go to something new. Jump around a bit more, see what's out there, and just learn more about the desktop experience. Are there any questions or topics you'd like to see make an appearance on a future survey? I definitely would like to see the command line and graphical tool question expanded out further, maybe broken down into further questions like, hey, do you like a terminal or a graphical file manager? Things of that nature where you can get a lot more, I guess, detailed look at maybe different use cases where maybe a terminal makes sense for something, but then a graphical tool makes sense for something else. Please make use of this space for anything you like. I'm going to be very creative and write Arch. By the way, I'm sure that not a single other respondent has written that in their survey. So let's go and submit it. And there we are done. So this was not an important survey or anything like that, but I felt like it was a good time to talk about some of my experience using Arch. And hey, if you want to let me know yours as well, let me know in the comment section down below. And I'll leave the survey in the description as well. So if you want to go and fill it out for yourself, go and do so. So if you like the video, go like the video. And if you really like the video and you want to become one of these amazing people over here, check out the Patreon, Scribes, and LiberaPay, link in the description down below. That's going to be it for me, and Arch Linux, by the way.
Something like this.